Puder was trying to stay close to he's got a key lock there, Puder, trying to get a key lock on angle before he was hanging out to the corner.
Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on those notifications. And once you're done, leave a comment down below and I just might end up responding. While 99+% of the action you see in professional wrestling is scripted and entirely in the realm of kayfabe, there lives a small percentage of fighting that's going on for real. Pro wrestling is built up on ego and masculinity after all. You can't be too shocked that there's been a few moments that really were exactly how they looked on screen. I'm D Wicket and here's 10 times WWE fights turned into shoots. Number 10, JBL versus the Blue Meanie. ECW One Night Stand. Bad blood has been boiling between the three brands of WWE for a while now. Specifically, Paul Heyman ran ECW, which happened to get invaded by the Raw and SmackDown locker rooms on their home turf. While Paul verbally dealt with his attackers, the Blue Meanie partook in the ensuing brawl between the brands later that night. Everyone was made out to be viciously beating one another during said brawl, but Bradshaw took it one step too far when he actually pummeled Meanie like a polar bear to a seal. I'm not even sure we can show his face post-brawl. Number 9, Perry Saturn versus Mike Bell. Perry Saturn came over to the WWF from WCW alongside Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, and Dean Malenko, and the group were set to make a huge splash in their new company. While Eddie and, whether or not they want to admit it today, Chris Benoit became some of the biggest stars of their era, Perry Saturn is hardly remembered for anything outside of that time he dated a mop. You heard me right. Moppy. The mop's name was, fun times for Perry Saturn. The reason he was saddled with the janitor's equipment was because of this match, with an enhancement talent by the name of Mike Bell. During their match, Bell botches an arm drag and leaves Saturn landing directly on top of his head. Saturn would return the favor, but not before a few swings and misses toward a concerned Mike Bell. Perry would then toss the youngster out of the ring, landing directly on top of his head. Number 8, Goldberg versus Steven Regal, or William Regal as you'll probably know him as today's NXT general manager. You all likely know Goldberg, either as arguably the second greatest streak holder in wrestling history, or as the disappointment machine he's become post-2016. The last few years haven't been the first blunders in Goldberg's career, however. He did work for WCW after all. One such mistake was Goldberg taking on Steven Regal, one of the best technical wrestlers of his day, one of the few men who could genuinely grapple Goldberg down to the ground. There's mixed opinions over Regal either being told to wrestle 6+ minutes or if he went into business for himself to humiliate the sometimes called talentless Goldberg, but one thing's for sure, he really wasn't supposed to be going over 5 minutes in technical wrestling bouts. Number 7, Sexy Star snaps Rosemary's arm. The next entry actually comes from AAA at their biggest event of the year, Triple Mania, and the 2017 edition of this annual event was one of the biggest messes in modern wrestling history. There were plenty of moments throughout the night that led to Triple Mania being the disaster that it was, but no moment more notable than the climax of the night between female wrestlers Rosemary and Sexy Star. The match actually ends with Sexy Star strapping in an armbar onto Rosemary for the submission victory, except the bell rings, but Sexy Star doesn't move, or doesn't let it go. And in fact, she only appears to go off a little bit harder. In fact, Sexy Star in real life decided to just tear Rosemary's arm out and snap it off its socket. So, yeah, if you're looking to hire someone for a pro wrestling event this year, maybe don't look in Sexy Star's direction. Number 6, Brock Lesnar versus Braun Strowman. Now that is a terrifying pair of muscled up boys that I would not like to see legitimately swinging tree trunks at each other. I'm normally all for it and want to see the craziest thing imaginable, but honestly, I think people in the vicinity just might start dropping if these two went at it. Thankfully, the one time they did have a little squander, it was very temporary. During the Universal Championship Triple Threat match at the 2017 Royal Rumble, Braun Strowman took on Brock Lesnar, and I could probably make this the longest run-on sentence in history, and you're still not going to be able to remember that third man in this match by the end of this ridiculously long and incredibly lengthy Kane. It was Kane. Kane was the third man. Anyways, Braun accidentally knees a tad bit too hard, and Brock Lesnar decides to Brock Lesnar.
That clubbing. Oh, wow. A knee to the jaw. A knee to the jaw. He caught Lesnar good. A knee to the jaw. Brock got him back.
Number 5, Lex Luger versus Bruiser Brody. For anyone curious as to why Luke Harper left WWE and decided upon the name Brody Lee, well, here you go. Back throughout the days of the territories, Bruiser Brody was one of the most physically imposing, physically impressive specimens in the entire sport during his era. Until this day, remains one of the most legendary big men in all of pro wrestling. Now, we generally try to keep these lists pretty modern, but I had to dip all the way back to 1987 for one of the most memorable shoot fights in the history of the company. Two names went in: hottest thing in the business, Bruiser Brody, and hot shotting to the top, Lex Luger. A few years before his prime, and Brody a good few years into it. Lex wanting to make a name for himself, and Brody just wanted to get in, do his job, and get out as per his usual. Yet Lex had to tough man it, trying to get his name out there, and was very lucky that the far more experienced Brody decided the worst he should do to the younger Luger was no sell a few punches. Number 4, the story of the great Antonios. Another older clip, and one that's not even from the WWE. Different century, wrong company, D-Wicket's falling apart. Well, now without good reason, as this old classic clip actually comes from Japan and features a man who'd opened the doors to Japan's largest pro wrestling company, New Japan Pro Wrestling, Antonio Inoki. Inoki would eventually become a WWE Hall of Famer despite having hardly any involvement with the company. That is just how legendary Inoki's career is. Maybe the lowest point of it came during a match against the great Antonio, this massive hunk of humanity who would try and use his immense size to intimidate foes. During a match pitting Inoki versus the Great, the two Antonios had a disagreement when Great tried no-selling too many of Inoki's moves, and the Japanese man finally lost his marbles and let loose on the bigger man. Inoki ended the night pissed, shouting that pro wrestling was fake, and stormed out of the arena. Number 3, the Montreal Screwjob. Oh my 80s match and 80s Japan match, now hardly even a match. While the Montreal Screwjob might be remembered more as a moment in wrestling history instead of an actual match, but this did technically start out as a match and end up as a real life fight, so why not? At the 1997 Survivor Series pay-per-view event, Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels walked into the match both highly heated at each other and looking to leave with the WWF Championship. And neither man really knew if they were going to be leaving with the, yes, predetermined WWF Championship. Bret was scheduled to win the match, refusing to lose in his homeland of Montreal, but Vince McMahon actually came out before the match ended to ring the bell and force the belt onto Shawn. That is the simplest, most under 200-word way to answer a question wrestling fans could generally go dozens upon dozens of thousands words in. Long story short, Bret was no longer in the WWF come the night's end, and would end up knocking Mr. McMahon out backstage not too long after.
Look at this! Oh, you're kidding me. Michaels, are you going to try to beat Bret Hart with a sharpshooter? Yes, he is!
Number 2, New Jack. I don't think there's any way that we could really talk that openly about New Jack. Things that New Jack has done in order to stop a match. Thrown a man off the sides of scaffolding. A 17-year-old repeatedly in the head with a fork. Thrown his body off tall. Thrown other bodies off tall. Probably some other attempted. Actually, yeah. Literally a dude. Is it obvious we really can't talk that much about New Jack yet? If you want a specific entry, pretty much any of his matches ended in a real-life brawl, so just scroll through his Wikipedia. And number 1, Daniel Puder versus Kurt Angle. If you recognize the name Daniel Puder, you might know more WWE history than you thought. Or perhaps you're better off on our other channel, Watch MMA, which you should go check out when you're done here, as after all, Daniel Puder did have some mixed martial arts experience before stepping into the Tough Enough competition back in 2004. It was this MMA background that gave Puder confidence. See, he and the other competitors were just told off by Kurt Angle and challenged then and there to a live TV shoot fight. That background experience gave Puder enough confidence to step up, and once he did, he had Angle down and nearly broken in an armbar within just moments. Obviously, it's not a good look for a total nobody to best your number 1 guy, so it's a pretty good thing that this relative nobody didn't end up actually snapping Angle's arm.
Puder was trying to stay close to he's got a key lock there, Puder, trying to get a key lock on Angle before he was hanging out to the corner.
And those are 10 matches that turned into brawls. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments down below. After liking the video, subscribe to the channel, and notifications, ring that bell.